tropes put you into like the emotional state that you need to be in.
Tragic setbacks.
Yeah.
It is emotional shorthand.
Something. If you didn't learn anything from the fight, then you failed the other person. Oh yeah, we fall for it hard. Hi everyone, I'm Ty, and with me is my dear friend, or should I say my best friend, Claire, and we love Asian dramas. And you might know us from What the Force podcast, which is a Star Wars podcast where we talk about the deeper messages in Star Wars. What is the Force? What is balance? We talk about the fandom. And throughout our journey together over the past 6 months or so, we have, as best friends do, share TV shows and movie recommendations to watch. And we sort of discovered and rediscovered Asian dramas together. And with our journey of finding deeper meanings in stories with things like Star Wars, we discovered deeper meanings in these Asian dramas. So, Marie-Claire Gould.
Yes?
Would you like to introduce yourself on this podcast, which we are calling Fall For It?
Yeah. Thanks, Ty. And this is like a reverse situation for me because I normally host What the Force podcast, which deals with, specifically looking into everything about Star Wars, the fandom, and the deeper meaning we find. But I'm also on an actual play podcast called Tavern Tales, where we play through D&D. And Ty and I became friends kind of with our mutual love of Star Wars. And almost daily, we are finding ourselves chatting about life, Star Wars, and pretty much everything else. And back in December, I was sick for a little while. I had a flu and I couldn't really do anything but stay on the couch and watch TV. And at that time, I was going through a bunch of anime on Netflix, and it was like, hey, since you watched this, why don't you check out this show? I was like, okay, I'm sure it's a good show to like turn my brain off for a little while and just kind of, vegetate. And I've never had problems with watching anime and reading subtitles. And that's something that you do have to get used to when you are watching Asian dramas, because it's in another language. They're never translated they're never dubbed into other languages, because that would be really weird. Whereas they can get away with it a lot more with animation.
Yeah.
So the first recommendation after I was finishing Project K, which is an excellent anime if anyone's interested, was Playful Kiss or A Mischievous Kiss, the Korean version. And it literally, like it's not great, like that version of it, and but it's got this storyline which is absolutely fascinating and really follows kind of these slow burn tropes that really get your brain tickled. And from then it like started Netflix knowing that I was like peaked because maybe of the algorithm and like how quickly I went through it. It was mainly that I was sick, started recommending all of these other ones. And I think I went through in like 2 months, I think I went through 6, maybe 8 Asian dramas. So yeah, I was hooked. And then I took a little bit of a break, mainly because I was starting my Star Wars podcast in February, and had a lot of focus on that. And there was a lot of Star Wars content I wanted to get caught up with Rebels and things like that. But this is still something I've stuck with, watched the occasional Asian drama. And, from Ty's perspective, we just started chatting about it. I don't actually remember what caused us to start chatting about it. I apologize.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it kind of happened pretty randomly because I think it all sort of bubbled up out of the talk about love stories. Because we're talking a lot about what's happening in Star Wars versus other media happening in the mainstream media and whatnot. But I think that you obviously recommended Refresh Man over and over and over. And you said, we have to watch the show together. We have to watch the show together. It's so Reylo because it's, and if anyone's unfamiliar with that, it's the Rey and Ben Solo pairing in Star Wars. So because we like that so much, it was fun to find the parallels in other media and in other TV shows and movies. So Refresh Man is one of those shows that it's a Taiwanese drama, and Marie Claire was very much into this particular drama. And I ended up watching it on my own, even though you wanted to watch it with me. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I just decided, okay, I probably won't like it, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it for when I get ready in the mornings. I watch TV shows, so I'll just try it in the morning. Upon the first episode, I was absolutely hooked, and there was no going back from there because, as many people know, when you start one drama that has this formula, you can't stop. It's
so good. They do it so well. Like they end an episode, so they have a full episode arc within. Maybe we should talk about the structure, because I think that's so key to the success of these Asian dramas, is that it's not like a soap opera in North America.
Right. It's not like a telenovela.
Telenovela, yeah.
Telenovela is very much like a soap opera. A soap opera is very much like a telenovela. It's a very Western hemisphere type of formula. But the Asian dramas have a very Eastern template that they follow that's completely different. Even though you can compare and contrast them, they're alike, but they're way more different than they are alike, I would say.
And they have these almost shifting arcs of genuineness of character. Like, so first and foremost, they are always short term. Whatever the drama is, they may decide to make a follow-up season, but the assumption is whatever you're getting in the set series or set season is all you're going to get. So if it's going to be 40 episodes, it's 40 episodes. If it's going to be 9 episodes, it's 9 episodes. And they always have a set timeline by which they, subscribe to that.
Yeah, because they tell the full story.
They tell a full story within that season, within that series, and it start to end, and it always ends in some way that is mentally satisfying for the viewer most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
I have seen some exceptions to that. Boys Over Flowers, the Korean version, ended so weird.
Right. Yeah.
They went in weird directions, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think both of us have experienced a very good range of these dramas, and both of us have experienced different types. Like, a lot of people that watch a lot of these experience just Korean dramas, especially a lot of people in the Western hemisphere, it seems, are very hooked on Korean dramas, and they think that is the genre. But they don't realize, I don't think a lot of the time, they don't realize that China is doing it now, and Taiwan has been doing it. Yeah. Even
and Japan, like live action, basically versions of shoujo mangas.
Yep.
That is like the main story narrative that is pulled on for these. Right. So the structure of the episode specifically, and why it drags you in, and I know that some North American shows like Shadowhunters pull on this episode structure a tiny bit. So you do see it occasionally in North America, but we're not used to it. We're used to seeing a complete episode arc and it's done. And maybe it leaves on a tiny cliffhanger, but what they do is they record the whole season, and the last 10 minutes of each episode is the first minutes of the next episode.
Right.
It's like they shifted the entire season 10 minutes.
Yeah.
To show you, hey, this is what you're getting into in the next episode. And they get you right into it. And you're like begging for more, because you just got into, the rise of the action that gets you into it. And that's particularly bad for Netflix, because hey, you want to watch more? Yes, I do. Yes, of course I do.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? She just slapped that guy, or she
Confess
just
her
yelled.
feelings.
Yeah, she just told him she loves him and he doesn't reply. Like, what are you doing to me? So Netflix, like the whole idea of binge watching and these Asian dramas, or streaming services like Drama Fever and all of these other groups that promote this content are really bad for these, because like you're like, okay, whoa, 4 hours later I've watched 5 episodes and I'm like blurry eyed and like have gone on this emotional like 3-hour roller coaster.
I think Netflix is realizing that, and I am actually I'm really shocked at the politics behind all of what's happened in the past year or so, because and I'll sum this up in a very short way, but if people don't know this, South Korea, with a lot of the things it's been doing with North Korea and the US, China decided to ban all South Korean cultural content from China. So that effectively got rid of Korean dramas. And obviously Korean dramas are pretty popular all over the world, but especially in China. So what happened when they banned Korean dramas from China was that China decided to start producing dramas with the same formula. And even so, like ripping off a lot of the shows coming out of South Korea, they would just do the same formula and the same story, but produced in China, obviously passing the Chinese censors and whatnot. So with that, and then with Netflix made a deal with a Chinese streaming service to acquire Chinese dramas. So now we're seeing this rise of Chinese dramas that we hadn't really had before, and especially Chinese dramas that are being sold in the US or being promoted and distributed in the US via these streaming services. It's a very like weird time to consume these, especially for us, because and we'll go ahead and say this now, is that we are new to this essentially, and there's plenty of people that know way more about Korean dramas and the Asian dramas in general. But I think we're going on this really interesting journey where we're discovering these deeper messages, and we're discovering like what this can teach us, that goes kind of parallel to our Star Wars journey. It's really interesting. And on top of that, like we're getting shows like Meteor Garden that are internationally mainstream. So I find it a very interesting time to kind of dissect and analyze these stories, because it's changing right now.
Yeah.
Or at least it feels like it is. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
No, I think you're very much right. Like, when I spoke to my friends, when I started to get into this, because I have a few girlfriends that have watched K-dramas, especially, and they had watched Boys Over Flowers, Hana Yori Dango, the Japanese version based on the Japanese manga. And they were like, oh, you're just getting into K-dramas? Like, and I think that maybe it's because in Canada, we've been kind of just more accepting maybe of, alternative culture media, because pretty much with the exception of kind of our own CRTC, we have to have 40% Canadian content. We're kind of open to whatever kind of comes across our borders, be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. They were surprised that I hadn't got into them sooner.
Right.
But I think it's because something had changed in Netflix where they were like, let's try it out. And it had been around for, I think, a year or two before I got into them, where they were kind of hidden in the background, but I wasn't watching those things. I was watching like Marvel Netflix shows. And I've started to love this short-term season format where it's like, I'm committing to this season and that's all I'm committing to.
Right.
Like I can mentally commit to only this. And like seeing how many episodes there are and being like, okay, I can handle this because my life is so busy and I've got so much going on. I need to like mentally prepare myself to take on a commitment like this. I know that sounds so weird. We used to live in a world where it's like every week we would watch these shows on TV, but now I need to like schedule in time for content consumption,
Right.
because I am spending so much time doing content creation.
Yeah. And I think that tells a lot with our generations. Like we are about 10 years apart, you know, but in age, but we are kind of experiencing similar things. As far as, like you said, scheduling your life around the content that you're consuming versus the content that you're creating. So yeah, I think that more and more people.
I think that people used to schedule their lives around just the content that they were consuming. It wasn't,
yes.
There wasn't a question around whether content creation would come into that for most people. It's not like people sat down and were like, oh, I'm going to have a radio show. Cause like that was not a thing.
Now everybody has a podcast.
Right? But I actually think that it's really a valuable thing to, I mean, I guess, I used to draw a lot, so that's content creation in a way. Like,
right.
There were things that you do, you needlepoint, you paint pictures, like there was things in the past that people did. They knit, you're creating something, and the balance of, are you creating or are you consuming?
Right. That's hard, especially as like a 20-something-year-old or a 30-something-year-old. Honestly, there's this, again, I feel like I'm just not hitting this in my life where I have realized that I need to create as opposed to consume 100% of the time. So this is like my way of expressing what I've learned from consuming what I've consumed. I think it's really important to do. And with these Asian dramas, you can very much like watch them and shut your mind off, but I can't help but watch them actively. I can't help but watch them and go, wait, what does this mean about their culture versus this culture versus the different interpretations and the adaptations between different stories that I've seen over and over again, the adaptations of the tropes. All of this means something about who we are as people. And I can't help but actively like think while I'm watching them. And I'm enjoying it for the romance, and I'm enjoying it for, it makes me happy. But at the same time, I'm also picking apart at the little things and what does it mean for me and for us as people and for us as becoming like this smaller world.
Yeah.
Where we share.
I mean, that's what it represents. We're able to, because of the internet, get content from pretty much anywhere in the world.
Right. That's
different voices sharing different stories and different perspectives. And oh boy, do sometimes, especially when you run into like a cultural thing associated with an Asian drama that seems so foreign for us little North Americaners.
Yeah.
That you're like, whoa, this really seems off.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe 20 years ago, some of these stories might not have been as shocking. Like the example is, reading the manga for Hana Yori Dango. At one point, she gets dragged by a car.
Ugh, God.
They did not include that in Meteor Garden.
No.
In 2018. She gets dragged by a motorcycle in the Korean version and is not dragged at all in the Japanese version. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's fascinating to like dig into it and be like, okay, so this was actually based on a manga. What does the source material say? And then what do each of these versions say? Or what are each of these versions trying to say based on what they've chosen to include, what they've chosen to add?
Mm-hmm.
And how they tell the story.
Yeah.
I would say that Meteor Garden 2018, in my very humble opinion, is the best version of Hana Yori Dango. Hana Yori Dango.
Yes.
It is my favorite version thus far, and I've now watched 3 and 1 episode of the Taiwanese version.
Taiwanese version is very good, but I heard the second season is not, so. Yeah. No, and again, it's very interesting when you come across things such as kotatsu, which is like the table heater that they put under the table and they put a blanket over it in Japan so they can keep warm.
Because things aren't heated.
Because things aren't heated. Exactly. And you
Yeah.
don't realize that when you start watching these. You're like, why do they need what?
Well,
Why?
Because so in Japan, if you're in a regular apartment, you have a oil heater.
Right.
Which means that to have heat in your apartment, you need to go to the store and buy oil to heat your apartment. And it's smelly and it's gross.
Mm-hmm.
So a kohatsu is an electric heater that attaches to a table and has a blanket that goes over the table. And the family would sit under there in the mornings when it was colder and eat breakfast. Because remember, in Japan, if you're kind of, middle or lower class, you sit on the floor to eat.
Yeah, and the romantic translation of having this table heater is that sometimes you fall asleep underneath it because it's warm.
Yeah.
And cute things happen because of it. And that is such a thing that when you're watching it from the US, or in your case Canada, or the Western Hemisphere in general, you don't understand, but yet you know exactly what the interpretation would be in your culture, because you relate to the people on their individual level, like experiencing love, experiencing friendship, going through these changes, becoming, from the adolescent to an adult, and you just relate to it regardless of the cultural differences. And that's beautiful. Like, what a way to learn about different cultures and different people from across the world but in these stories about relationships,
Yeah. Not all Asian dramas are romantic.
Right.
Ty and I, because we seem to be hopeless romantics, we'll probably stick in that vein, at least for now. There is a K-drama that I watched in addition to the other ones that I watched, which is Hello My 20s, which has some romantic like storylines, but because it's set around, these 5 women, it's more about the friendship between them than about the romantic subplot, because the subplot is like way down on the food chain as far as importance within that show.
Right. Yeah, and there's some that I have on my list that I want to watch that are not entirely romantic, but are from like Taiwan or from Japan or whatever. But I think, yeah, when we're talking about it on this podcast, we're definitely talking about the romantic dramedies, or ones that have a romance as a very important plot point in the story. Because I think it's really important that we understand that this formula centers around the romance. The romance it's the main point that all of the other plot points revolve around. And if you go like 5 minutes without something happening, like something progressing with the romance, it's like,
it feels weird.
It feels super weird, and it's a problem. You're like, okay, how does this relate back to my OTP? Because I got to get back to my OTP.
Well, and it's like when we have in Meteor Garden, there's an character, so a sub character romance where they spend like 6 episodes on it. Maybe I don't know.
It's like 6, yeah.
And like I suffered through it because apparently I have the patience of a saint.
I don't know how you do that. I don't know how. I skipped it entirely. I saw the first episode where it was featured, and I said, "Oh, no, not doing this. I'm not."
I mean, like my challenge with that is that the assumptions that you make as a watcher is that everything will eventually tie back to teaching the OTP something.
Yeah.
Right. So one true pairing of this show. And in this subplot, which was entirely added to Meteor Garden, it does not exist in the manga. It doesn't exist in any of the other shows. I can't speak for Meteor Garden 2001.
I don't think it did. I don't think it did.
It entirely exists to like fill weird space and give this one character something to tie into, I think.
Ugh.
And it
it's
was awkward and weird and felt out of place and
yeah.
didn't really do anything other than fill space while one character decided to come back to town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating. I think that I have to speculate that maybe the Chinese dramas are still trying to find their footing with balancing their need for propaganda, right? Because I mean white, I try to be as nice as possible, but white propaganda, not black propaganda, which is meaning false versus true. So like white propaganda is like true, is like speaking facts. And they're balancing that versus they're balancing this new formula that they're trying to copy from the Korean dramas versus all of their focus on idols and all of their focus on what do they have? The culture, the show called Super Idol, I think, is what led to the guy who plays that character who's in that arc. I don't know how to say his name. Matsua, yeah. He was on Super Idol with Dylan Wang. So I feel like a lot of the production wanted to owe him more of a role in Meteor Garden than he was getting. So by giving him his own romantic arc, even though it didn't play out like in his favor at all, I feel like they were giving him that chance to get more screen time under his belt because he was one of the runner-ups in Super Idol. I don't like speculating about that stuff a lot. It's just something that I happen to come across on the interwebs. But
the other characters, we're just gonna end up talking about Meteor Garden. The other characters all end up getting arcs,
right
of F4, which is like the main,
four guys
quartet of flowery boys, which they don't reference at all in the show, so we have no idea. It's almost like they're fabulous for, I don't really know what, like
I think they say something at some point, but I think they actually say flower for no. No, I don't think they do, because when he says it to one guy, he goes, oh, F4, like the F4 button on the keyboard.
Yeah.
Or like another one says like an airport terminal, and you're like, what? I don't understand.
Yeah. It makes a lot more sense in the Japanese version.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yes, there's lots of complexity, and we're still sorting it out. And I think that that's the key. So maybe we'll dig into what have we learned thus far about these Asian dramas in our very short few months of becoming obsessed with them.
Oh God. The things I've learned the most from them is basically about the balances between the extremes. So there's always extremes in Asian dramas. There's always heavy misunderstandings and then heavy making ups. If something bad happens, something good's gonna happen like right after that. But it's definitely about the emotional extremes and how they lead to a better understanding of yourself and about the other person involved and about other people. Like, because there's a lot of times where a main character or even a secondary character in the drama will experience somebody else's, story, some kind of extreme, some kind of drama that's going on, and they will figure something out and they'll move on. Like they'll grow up a little bit, or they'll figure something out. And that's really beautiful to me, because I always think, in my life, I'm always really hard on myself and I'm super analytical about what I'm going through. And one thing that I always hammer into my head was, what did you learn from this? If I walk away from something, I have to learn something from it. If something changes, like, what was it? And especially watching things like Refresh Man and similar stories like that, the main characters always say to themselves very explicitly, okay, what did I learn? Like, what did I get out of this? So
yeah, they always have that like a self-reflection moment, and we get that in, I would say, almost every drama that I've watched where they're
Yeah.
like either talking to themselves or they're close confidant, because there's always a close confidant. The question is usually posed, why did I have to go through all of this? Or why did we have to go through all of this?
Yes.
Was it better to have given up? And the answer invariably is no, because you've been through all of this. You've proven yourself to be true.
Mm-hmm.
You've proven your love to be true. And nothing can tear you apart. It's like a reaffirmation of all of the lessons that they've learned through literally the most crazy roller coaster that these characters have ever been through. Because usually they always set it up that these people were in some sort of almost like a character purgatory. They might have thought themselves to be happy, but they didn't know what they always needed.
Yeah.
And that's always key, because like the first episode always characterizes these people. They on the surface think that they have everything they need, but they just wait,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so typically in Asian dramas, they will fall into 4 categories. And the setting matters little, actually, because any of these settings could fall into more of a shoujo high school type setting, or into an adult type setting, or into, like older person reflecting back on their life type setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's telling the same stuff with these different genres, and they could be a combination of 2 or more of them, which is really, really interesting. So we'll have melodramas. So that is, life is terrible all the time until it's suddenly not. Right?
Yeah.
We'll have action. So there's some sort of like action adventure type, a subplot or plot that is driving the story and the character arcs in the narrative as well. An example of that would be Bonsung Strong Girl from Korea.
Mm-hmm.
It's like mystery action adventure, and she's also kind of a superhero, so it's got that like layer to it as well, but it's also a romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Historical, so Mr. Sunshine, which is just actually in progress and should be wrapping up, I think, later September or October. That's the next one I'm planning on starting on my list.
Yep.
And then romantic comedy, which be careful of thinking that it's going to be comedic all the time.
Yeah.
Romantic comedy means the characters fall into the farcical.
Mm-hmm.
They are ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
which makes us laugh at their situation and what happens, but they will be like, in some ways, what they experience is worse than the melodrama.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the dichotomy of the plot versus the funny moments.
Right.
It is Boys Over Flowers, Meteor Garden, all the same plot. What those characters go through is horrifying.
Yeah.
Like at points.
Mm-hmm.
But they play it off in these funny, hilarious ways sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these funny and beautiful moments. But it's like, the burn is actually harder, I think, with these romantic comedies.
Yeah, absolutely. There because of the very poignant moments of the drama that and how it plays out and how it can go from dramatic to comedic so quickly. I think that sometimes is what makes it so painful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, men and women like these sorts of stories. I would say that it's different when we're talking about like soaps or telenovela kind of things, right? Because those tend to focus more on the drama. And there's not a lot of comedic effect. But whereas you have like these Asian dramas, they have the comedic effect. They have the cute moments. And then, with the way that the formula goes and the way that the arcs go, it's a lot more digestible, I think. It's just
for males to watch, like, or
Yeah,
Well,
for both.
they
I think
they
it's
yeah, they don't shy away from fighting. Like,
yeah.
and one of the best examples of that was weirdly like bromance as an Asian drama. Like literally they
I
fight
love
like
it.
almost every episode there's like some sort of massive like fight. And like that's highly enjoyable. And then there's also like kind of there's a few like major tropes that I've spotted, and actually I found on a just an article on the web that somebody was writing about these major tropes, and I see them. And as we pull out more of these, like as we go through these, because I think our intention is to actually deep dive into singular storylines and things
Yeah.
like that, and
Mhm.
and actually dig into them. These are the major ones that I totally agree with. So I'm gonna share them out here. Cinderella stories.
Mhm.
That's
Rags to riches.
always like a huge thing. So
Yeah.
rich guy, poor girl situation.
Yeah.
Always, 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 always. Not always, but like that's one of the major storyline tropes that pull on. And then
Yeah.
that difference of need and how they work that out.
Mhm.
Love triangles. They do it so well.
They do it so well.
Love triangles.
Much better than in the US, much better than Western media by far.
Cross-dressing.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah, I know. Like,
Absolutely.
so like, the appeal of that has been around since Shakespearean times.
Yeah, even
But
before
like
that.
they pull it in so well. And even if it's sometimes they'll even just pull this trope in for like an episode.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna cross-dress, and like bromance, she cross-dresses as a woman. So she's a woman who's dressing as a man permanently, and then she cross-dresses as a woman. Like hilarious. Like hilarious.
Yeah.
Some sort of family secret,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Something that is in the background of either family from a romantic perspective that is keeping them apart or pulling them together. And if it comes out, it changes. It's like the turn of a plot. It flips things and it makes them evaluate themselves in a new direction.
Yep.
It's really good. Forced to live together. So and this could be just a short period of time, like, oh, they were stuck somewhere in an
Yeah.
elevator and they had to sleep together that one time.
Yeah.
And that changes the relationship.
Yeah. Or they could be forced to live together, and that
from
is
the start of the show. Like Good Morning,
Good Morning Call. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so good.
And you just brought this up, but idols as actors.
Yeah.
So, the cast is made up of the equivalent would be like American Idol.
Mhm.
But like the idols in Asian culture are so much bigger
Yeah.
than in North American culture.
It's a big
Like
deal here.
they become these instant like sensation stars, and their lives are tracked. Like Aaron Yan, who's one of my favorite Taiwanese actors, was part of Fahrenheit as a boy group and had like left them and stuff like that, but he still has this massive following that has followed him into his solo music career, as well as all of the Asian dramas that he has done, because he actually moved over to start doing Chinese dramas. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. Oh,
Yeah.
God. That makes sense now.
Yeah, because he's perfect. Somebody is terminally ill.
Oh, God. That one drives me crazy.
I mean, they did it in Bromance. That
they did it in
sub-character.
Bromance. Yeah, and they never got a kiss out of it. I was so mad about that.
Yeah. He loves her though.
Yeah, but they never kissed.
This one is huge, and when I don't see it, I get like so excited because it's so either the main romantic male lead has no parents or an evil mother.
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually one of the reasons I still love Mischievous Kiss to this day.
Okay. That's what you were trying to explain earlier. Okay.
Yeah. So in Mischievous Kiss, it flips that trope because the mom of the boy loves the daughter so much she literally ships them.
Yeah.
Like she's like drawing like hearts around their names together. Like it's taking it to the reverse in the extreme. So the flipped trope is also really wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Mom usually doesn't exist, or mom is evil. That
Yeah.
is the generality of, or there's like a weird surrogate evil mom. I've also seen that happen too.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's usually the main conflict is with like the parents or the mother. It's always the mother is like, if the mother is in the picture, she is presenting like probably the greatest conflict for the couple. And in Mischievous Kiss, the mother actually, even though she loves the girl, is the main conflict because her son doesn't want to be with her because his mother approves of her.
Yeah.
He's staying away from her to spite his family.
Yeah. It's like, you want me to be with this person? I'm not going to be with this person.
Yeah. Which is like it's an exact reverse of what it normally is, which is,
and it's why I like it so much, because it's like so weird, even though there's like some cringy things about that show in general. Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
Tragic setbacks.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
God.
Oh, I've been forced to marry this other woman I don't love. Oh, my brother just died. Oh, my father just died. Oh, like all of these things. Like,
I hate the forced marriage. I hate the forced marriage ones. Those drive me insane.
Like in Boys Over Flowers, the Korean version, is this whole subplot about the main character, Jandi. She is a swimmer, and she's like relying on that to get into like post-secondary, and then suddenly, like, because of her sacrifice to save the main guy, like she can no longer swim again, and then like he never finds out. Like it's this like, and that was all added, like that wasn't in the original manga. It's never been pulled out into anything else, and it's been this like why don't you swim again?
Oh, God.
Like, why don't you swim? Like tragic setbacks. And the thing that is so funny is that they seem, although like tragic, if you were to think about them, so ridiculously played up.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah.
Like my mother locked me in my house, so I'm going to go on a hunger strike. Like it does not seem like this would ever happen in real life, but because we're like in this weird world of these of these Asian dramas, because we are playing by their rules, we play along as an audience.
Yeah, like a lot of people who are watching Meteor Garden for the first time, the 2018 version, who are not familiar with the fact that it's an adaptation, are saying things like, oh, he's stalking her. Oh, he bought the house next to her. He bought the apartment next to her. He's stalking her. If a guy did that to me in real life, I'd call the police. And you're like, wait a second. Hold on. This doesn't play by real world rules. It doesn't. It does not feel like morality. And you've said this many times, and you actually wrote something about it. This is a farce. Asian dramas themselves are a farce. They have to be. They're not real life at all.
And so just a little bit of my personal background. I'm directing a farce, which is a play that has a particular comedic structure. But part of the key of farces is that these characters are very genuine. They exist in the world by which they have set their own rules to. Hey, you want, this world where 2-bit actors, end up getting into each other's lives, and there's tons of misinterpretations and changing of people's opinions of things throughout the play because of little tidbits of information that come out throughout the play. We have to believe what the characters are experiencing because they're playing it so genuinely. And we're brought into this world, and it tells us truths about ourselves because it's so over the top. It puts things into sharp focus of what they're actually trying to say because it's so over the top. And that was actually the last point I wanted to make, which is that these are over the top usually. I would say historical dramas are less so. just because they're already set in an over the top setting, because it's not nowadays.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So the things that I like look for, like with these dramas when I watch them, is obviously the tropes are super fun, and the tropes are like they're the way. And I do want to say this about tropes, because a lot of people think that tropes are lazy ways of writing. I've seen people say that before, and I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Tropes put you into like the emotional state that you need to be in because it's familiar to you. So when you start seeing a trope, your reaction to it, if it's oh, I've seen this before, I don't like it. Okay, hold on. You've seen it before is why they're putting it in. The reason why they're putting it in is because you've seen it before. Like they're setting you up for an emotion that's going to come after this. It's just a tool that people use when they write these stories. So
it is emotional shorthand.
Yeah, emotional shorthand.
It is a way to convey story in a shorter period of time. So if you have a lot to get through from a script writing perspective, throwing in a trope will simplify it so that they will get through that part of the storyline quicker.
Yeah, because it's boring if it's real. It's boring if it goes through the same process that you do as a human being living in the real world. It's not entertainment at that point, but...
And it takes them longer to set up trope reversals, but sometimes those pay off a little bit more too.
Well, even, and that's the funny thing is like the reverse trope is set up because of the trope.
Yeah.
In the first place, like,
they do so knowingly. And that's like one of the things that I've really thought about a lot, is that we only have the culture and the language by which we can speak to. So sometimes these tropes don't play well with us in North America because, like, the jealous boyfriend, our society in North America has actually changed quite a bit. That is less acceptable. Like the guy who will just see you with another guy and punch him.
Right.
But that's literally a guy trope in many of these Asian dramas that they still pull on. And it's purposefully put in there to show character change throughout the course of the whole plot.
Right. Because
he would punch somebody in the beginning and he would never punch somebody in the end.
Or the opposite, which could also be okay.
Yeah. Or he would punch somebody because he wants to come to her defense, like, or something. Or
he didn't really care at first about her because he thought they shouldn't be together because of other circumstances, and then finally comes to his senses, realizes that he doesn't want to see her with anyone except for him, and acts out in a extreme way, learns that it probably wasn't the best way to act out. But the tropes are like the such a good way to like tell these stories, and they're the best way, I think, to tell the extreme farce that it's in. I wanted to say the four things I look for.
Oh yeah, sorry, keep on. Going over you.
Yeah, so the four things that I look for, like when I'm watching these dramas, as far as the main relationship goes, and as far as like the main, well, it can apply to like friendships as well, depends. But the first one is that opposites always attract. And the subversion of that is that the two people experiencing this journey have to change in order to become more similar. They find that not only are they different, therefore they're attracted to each other, but also like through the things that they experience, they become more alike and they can share more together. And then the second one is that fighting. So a lot of couples in these Asian dramas like bicker together. A lot of the fighting is good. So that's the second one. Fighting is good. But the subversion of that is that you always come out learning something. If you didn't learn anything from the fight, then you failed the other person. And that goes back to like a lot of the self-analyzing. There's a lot of times where the main character will narrate some things in their own head.
Yeah.
And you get that in these dramas. They actually have that. So fighting is good. And the third one is the little things matter. And the subversion of that is that if the other person doesn't know, then there's no way to move forward. Meaning that if you do little things for someone, like giving them your milk pudding or holding the door open for them when you otherwise wouldn't, like the little bitty things do matter. But if the other person doesn't realize that you're doing that for them, if the other person doesn't see that those small gestures matter to you, then you're not moving forward in the relationship. Even though that one person is, both people have to understand it in order to move forward.
Yeah, and that's actually usually the conflict and the
misunderstanding.
When I talk about conflict, I'm talking about character differences of need.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the misunderstanding in the start of most Asian dramas, is that they're not on the same page.
Yes.
And they seem to be forever missing each other's intentions and desires and needs.
Yeah.
And it is, it's fascinating actually to like break it down that way and actually look at the structure of, say, a season like Meteor Garden or Good Morning Call and go like, oh, here's the exact moment where they're actually on the same page and their relationship moves forward one step.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
They step one step closer to each other versus missing each other because there was a misunderstanding of intention.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it literally happens where there's a great trope where they're running. And this actually ties to my next one. I'll say the next one first. The fourth one that I have is big romantic gestures also matter as well as the small ones, especially when there's a misunderstanding. The subversion of this is that, but it's always followed by a serious discussion. So a lot of the time, if there's like this big misunderstanding and one of them or both of them figure out at the same time that, hey, the other person does care about me, or the other person is doing this for me and I messed up or whatever. They thought this was happening, but it wasn't. There's always like a big romantic gesture to come. And sometimes one of the best tropes is that they just literally run to the other side of the city to go find that person, right?
Yeah,
They just like run full out, full speed, sometimes in the rain. And
if one person isn't ready to like hear the message, they will miss each other.
Yes,
like behind a bus stop, or like a bus is like, and they're like running in speed with the bus, and the bus is going one way, and they just won't see each other. Like, and it seems so ridiculous, but because that's the world, and that's the character, and that's what they're pulling on. Like that is the story.
Yeah,
we fall for it.
Oh yeah, we fall for it hard. Thus is the name of the podcast. And I think, again, I see it literally happen so many times, but every time it happens, I'm like, oh, I'm so here for it. This is why I'm watching this. I want to see them run towards each other with the intention to make up for a misunderstanding. And then they pass each other. They miss each other. And because of that, it expounds on the misunderstanding a little bit more. It hurts a little bit more, and it also sets them up for an even more serious discussion when they do have to face each other, when they do have to sit down and actually parse out like what they're feeling at that moment.
Yeah,
it's gonna mean so much more, and that's why that's so great. That's why those four things I think are really important, because it's nurturing the relationship, and that's why you're watching these.
Yeah. And usually you can point out at some season where at some point in the storyline where they go from both negative side magnets to negative positive, where they actually match and flip and can't be separated.
Yes.
Like you can usually time it like, oh, no matter what now, they're not getting separated, because they almost like bounce, and like you try to push them together like same pole magnets, and they keep on like pushing apart, and
Yeah.
and no matter what you do, and then both of them experience something, and it might not be the same experience.
Right.
I think in Meteor Garden, Boys Over Flowers, Hannah, Yori, and Dango, it is the same moment for both of them. It's when he comes and saves her, and she's like, I can't possibly have you die for me or get hurt for me. Because in that moment, and like she takes the chair for him or whatever he ends up getting hit with, she like gets her body in the way. It's like they both came to save each other.
Yeah.
In that moment, they were on the same page.
Yeah, there was like this figurative, emotional, and then literal like exchange of pain and emotion. And then when that happens, like you said, yeah, they're not going to be separated after that. And what's interesting is that a lot of the time after that moment, and it could actually happen in some dramas I've watched, it happens in the very beginning. Like in the very beginning, these two fall in love and they're fated to be in love and there's no stopping it now. Internally, they love each other. But then externally, the conflict happens to where they can't be together because of something else. Sometimes that happens in the middle. Sometimes that happens towards the end. Sometimes it happens at the beginning.
Or
but
consistently throughout the show where they go up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down.
Like the rest of Meteor Garden after that scene. Yeah.
Yeah. And like they're together for a little bit and you're like, oh, it's so sweet. And then like, there's something that's standing in the way. There's always these stumbling blocks that break it in. But I think that Bong Soon, Strong Girl Bong Soon has the best meta line about this.
Oh God.
Which is the romantic lead at one point takes her aside and says, the most important thing is that you take one step forward towards each other. And then he takes one step forward towards her.
Oh. Kill me now.
It is so sweet. It's wonderful because he's trying to show her that although she's been attached to this other guy her whole life, that he's there and that they're meant to be together. It's just, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I love it. I love it when they have those meta moments about the characters in the show and they become very self-aware.
Yeah.
It feels weirdly good as the audience to be like, oh, that was that moment.
Yeah, because you're like, I've been experiencing this alongside you all along, and you finally get what you want, what you've been thinking in your head this whole time, which is like you're shouting at the main girl, like just take a chance on him, or you're shouting at the main guy, just express your feelings, or the opposite, like whoever.
Just grow up,
Just grow up, yeah. And when they finally express that literally and so explicitly, you go, yes, this is what I wanted.
I think that there's a trope that from high school drama perspective. So when things are set in high school, even though Meteor Garden is set in university, the original manga was based in high school, is that there's a trope around needing to grow up.
Yeah.
All of the characters around that person, the OTP, could be as grown up as could be. But the OTP is not grown up, and they don't act. They basically act like junior high schoolers in love. Yeah. Always.
Yeah, they're emotionally stunted because of something that happened to them, or something that they're unwilling to come to terms with that happened to them, or something like that. And they all have, again, it's that sometimes that's where the opposites attract thing pops up, is that the two things, they could be as similar as possible, but the two things that they can't get over are completely different. And they have to like figure that out together. They have to come to terms with that. I think there's an interesting thing in Devil Beside You, which I know you haven't seen yet.
That's okay.
But it's, she literally, like the main girl, I think it's like 5 episodes before the end, says the only thing that he hasn't figured out yet, the only thing he hasn't come to terms with yet is how his mother abandoned him. She explicitly says it, and And it literally sets you up to go, oh wait, he hasn't dealt with that yet. Oh no. Here we go. But that's the underlying problem throughout the whole thing was with the relationship. He couldn't come to terms with his mom left him and he thinks everybody's going to leave him, that kind of thing. That's his struggle. And she knows this. And she finally, when she figures out that she loves him, she knows that she can deal with anything that he has to deal with. She can be there for him for whatever he has to go through. And it's really heartbreaking what they have to go through to overcome that. Because they have to be separated for like a year, and it's super sad. But when they come together at the very end, like they've both become like balanced, and they both have grown up so much, and they've grown up independently from each other. And there's, again, it's like that whenever you have these two characters, they have to overcome their traumas and they have to find balance within themselves.
Well, and it comes down to, especially these romantic dramas.
Yeah.
Everyone has baggage.
Yeah.
And that by trusting that other person to help you carry it and help you understand it and help you categorize it in the right way that you can carry it better, you become a better person.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Together, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, who doesn't want that? Like, oh, it's so good. Like it tickles that like base part of my cerebellum that just says like, oh yeah, that feels good.
Yeah.
My amygdala is like, oh, romance.
I know.
Love. And it's not about, because I think that the one key thing is like boys need to change. Like that's one of the major tropes. Girls need to become more confident, boys need to change.
Right.
But really, the girl is always the impetus for the boy to change himself, and the boy is the impetus for the girl to become more confident in who she is, which ties into, weirdly, both the heroine's journey and the hero's journey.
Ooh. Yeah.
No, it is
does.
Two sides of the coin. It is so interesting to watch. Like he must overcome some sort of dragon, usually his mother.
Yeah.
By the end of the whole arc. And she has to resolve this masculine role that she's taken on to be tough in the world so that she can be feminine.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, and it's usually if one of them is trying to spark change in the other, because it takes like a little bit of a role reversal in like Refresh Man, because he's trying to change her, but she doesn't realize it. He's trying to make her a better, stronger, more confident person. And because of her starting to change, she evokes the change in him.
Yeah, because he doesn't think he needs to change, but he's such a child.
Yeah, and that happens in the opposite way as well, right? Like, in Meteor Garden, Shinchai is trying to change Xiaoming-su, and when she starts to see the change in him,
she becomes more confident in who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's all
and also she embraces the femininity of herself throughout the show, like with the cooking competition, and with whereas like she goes from literally kicking him in the face and being this like, I'm tough, I don't need a man, I don't want a man, I just want to like go to school and help my family. And there's like this really cool parallel between family obligation in the show, which probably ties into a little bit of the Chinese cultural authority type desire to see obligation to family in there. But she's like, obligation to family is key, and he's like, screw obligation to family. And by the end they're both obligated to family, but because she has become part of his family. And there's also like midway, there's a point at which she says to him like, I don't need you to take care of me, I can take care of myself. And she says something to the effect of,
you know, if we're going to be a couple, we have to be equal. And there's something a little off with that. And it was because she didn't learn yet that they could take care of each other. And I think that's what ends up happening by the end of it, which I still haven't finished, but I know that's what happens because I have spoiled it for myself. But they do, like, that's the understanding that they come to, is that you can't just rely on yourself just to take care of yourself while you're in a relationship. You can take care of each other and you can lean on each other. That's something from Good Morning Call too, right? Because he always said, I told you to lean on me. And he says that to her, and you're like, damn.
And she ignores him like so many times. Yeah. I think that's like one of the things is like in farces, especially when the character has a truthful moment, where they bare their soul, they're always telling 100% of the truth from their perspective.
Absolutely.
It has to be a main character because secondary characters always lie. Well, especially if they've just entered that episode. Don't trust them. They're always lying to you.
So true. Oh my God, that's so true. I never thought about that.
If they just showed up that episode, don't trust that person.
That's so true. It's always like a misunderstanding, or it's something like it was their truth, but it's not really. And oh my God. God.
Except if they're a little old lady or a little old man, then you can trust them always.
Yeah. Or like the sister.
Oh yeah, but she was there for like a good episode, like long period of time, and she proved her worth by beating up Domingsi
totally.
right away, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and the domestic abuse is like is like a thing that I'm not super happy with from a trope perspective, but again, it's the ridiculously of the situation. There's also a lot of people getting knocked out in farces as well, so it's not something that I'm not I'm not used to. Like, it's I just roll with it.
If we want to talk, like, the real world translation of that is just picking on each other. It's not literally beating each other up. If you want to translate that into real life, it's just picking on each other,
like teasing each other.
Yeah.
And there's a level of them, like, these characters putting each other through hell.
Yeah.
You know, like they literally can put each other through hell. Like we see it in Refresh Man. We see it in you know, Fall in Love with Me.
Yeah.
Just You. It's usually the guy putting the girl through hell. And it's so frustrating to watch and get through sometimes, because you're like, oh, why are you putting up with this? But it's the weird world that they live in, and it's very satisfying by the end to see the change, to see the turn in that character as he becomes a better person.
Yeah, because there will be a time where the girl will say, I know what you're doing. Like, stop bullying me, or, you know, why are you messing with my emotions? Why are you messing with my feelings? Like, there is a moment where she will stand up to herself in a very simplified way that will be very explicit to him, and he'll go, oh crap, I effed up, and now I have to make up for it. How do I let her know how I really feel? Like, there's always that moment, and it's not like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of time it's very subversive, but.
Oh God, Mischievous Kiss was the worst. Like the worst. So she stands up in front of her whole class as people are graduating, and she's like, stop picking on me.
Yeah.
And then pulls her aside after in a dark alleyway and kisses her again.
Is that in the Japanese version? Or no, that's in the. It's in
the Korean version.
I say, because I watched the Japanese version and that did not happen. There was a good part in the Japanese version where he calls out her being in love with him at the dinner table, and she stands up and she slaps him in the face, and I'm like, hell yeah, girl! Like, I'm so happy.
Like, generally speaking, what I love about Asian drama female leads is that they have gumption.
Yeah.
Well, but then, like, they get worn down by all of the trials and tribulation, and they almost have to be like remade to remember you can have gumption and still be feminine.
And emotional. Like, okay, so there's something to say about like the emotionality of it all, because in the West, in order to be strong, in order to be like a strong female character or whatever, they kind of forego a lot of their emotion. They forego like their reliance on emotion, and they go with like the facts and with instinct, or with, like doing things logically or whatever.
Everybody cries all the time in Asian dramas.
Yeah, everybody cries all the time in Asian dramas. That's another thing though, right? Because I don't like the ones that cry too much. I think it's a little, and I cry a lot, and I get frustrated sometimes with how much they cry. But
Cry, yeah.
But to rely on your emotional reaction to something can be a very good thing when you need to express your feelings and your thoughts, especially because a lot of the time, like, you're not understanding your own feelings and thoughts. So in a time of heightened emotion, that might be the only time where you can express it, because otherwise, if you walk away from that instance and you still don't express it to them, you're going to misunderstand yourself again and again and again. You have to express it to that other person that it has to deal with. And that's what happens in these, is like, if they don't express their emotions, they walk away and they become more confused than ever.
Anyways, yeah, let's talk about the music.
Yeah.
These dramas. So
yeah, the music stuff is interesting. When I started out watching these and watching Refresh Man, the music is so captivating, shockingly prevalent. Yeah, it's so good in that one. I loved it, but and you told me you had all the songs on your list, like so you can listen to them.
It's on my iPhone. Like I got so obsessed with the music of Refresh Man that I downloaded I bought the album. I had to track them down because they weren't all in an album, whereas Meteor Garden is all in a beautiful album.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out, like, because some of them are only released under the kanji name. So I had to figure out, like, okay, so this is Wen Wei. I have to find his songs and find which album they're on, and download that specific song from iTunes. Not all Asian dramas use popular music.
No, not at all. Actually,
Korean dramas typically have the soap opera music in the background. Same with Japanese dramas tend to have this more soap opera-ish music. They might be getting a little bit more into the pop music, but what I love about both Taiwanese and Chinese dramas that are set in modern times so far is that they get these songs that show the emotionality of these critical turns or moments, or and then they use them over and over and over. They get stuck in your brain. And like, for example, in Refresh Man, they pull on like 6 or 7 key emotional themes, music, and then they use it throughout the show. And then they have like, we're doing work songs, and we're getting stuff done songs, and like, this is the main theme for the love arc. And it's like John Williams with the use of the themes in how they're used, like from a Star Wars parallel perspective. It's reminding the audience, hey, this is how you're supposed to be feeling at the emotion and at the moment, and it allows the viewer to instantly get on the same page, just the same as using the trope.
Yeah.
Meteor Garden did that very well in the 2018 version.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, like when you hear the song starting, you go, oh no.
Oh no.
It's gonna be
this person is not feeling well.
Yeah.
So specifically they actually pulled in 3 Western artists.
Yeah.
Meteor Garden 2018. So even though they were producing it typically for Asia, they knew these songs would help pull in, I would say, a more Western audience, and they knew that, and so they used River, and then they used
Say Something,
I'm giving up on you.
Every time I watch an episode, I get that song in my head forever. It's so good.
It's so good.
every time I hear the say something, I'm giving up on you, I'm like, oh no, here come the tears.
Yeah. So they have River by Bishop Bridge
Yep.
and Say Something by Great Big World.
Yep.
And Any One of Us Can Make a Stupid Mistake by Gareth Gates. And those were all Western songs that were pulled in. The rest of the songs are a mix of popular songs and songs that were produced and specifically created for the show, starring the F4 boys, the main males of the show. And then they did a concert, and then they tour, and they do albums, and like it's like a whole franchise now on top of it. So not only can you experience the show, but you can go to watch their concert on YouTube, and you can see them in alternative universe gear when they do like a special where it's set in like a fairy tale setting, and they do like a magazine. Shen Yu, who played Shensai, is actually like dressed as a princess, and Dylan Wang, who played Doming Si, is dressed as a prince, and then all the other guys are like dressed as like knights and stuff. Like, how to make more money off of a franchise? Disney, there you go. Make your lead singers.
Well, and I have to say, Disney tried to do that with their TV shows and their kid stars about 5-6 years ago.
They made tons of money off of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah, well, I know, but they tried to do it. Like, they tried to redo it again with, like, Sunny with a Chance and Wizards of Waverly Place. Like, all of those kids.
And, like, what's the one with the kids of the supervillains?
Oh, no, they're still doing it. Yeah,
they're still doing that. Yeah, they're still doing that from a teen perspective.
These kids keep getting messed up. Like, they keep getting into, like, the wrong stuff and everything. Like,
well, there was that one like 4-year period by which Mickey Mouse Club produced like half the major stars in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, like Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling and like who else was in there? Britney Spears. Like it was like all
Christina Aguilera.
It was like whoever was producing that was like a genius to get all that talent.
And that's so weird because like with the Asian dramas and the idols there, like I don't know if they just keep it under wraps better. They usually leave the profession pretty young and like go on to live pretty normal lives. From what I've seen. And I don't,
or they successfully transition fully into TV or solo careers. But it's hard for them because as much as we're like, oh, these are really cool people and really interesting, the fans in Asia can be quite harsh.
Oh, God, yeah. It's translating over here because there's some really nasty stuff about, like, Shinwei out there about how, her co-stars see her or about how she treated her classmates or something. And there's so many things out there. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking all this with a grain of salt because it seems to me, as someone who's new to all of this, that they're very, very, very mean. The fans are very, very mean. I actually listened to a podcast about a K-pop group and about how the crowd, they have like different colored like wands that they wave at K-pop concerts, especially when they have like multiple K-pop groups that come out and perform at the same concert. And they have different color wands and they wave the color for the K-pop group that they're like there to see. And whenever one of these K-pop groups came out once, because of the drama that was going on with one of the girls in that group and a guy from another K-pop group, they did a blackout. So no one waved any of their colors for them. And it was like this huge deal. And it was so sad because you're talking about thousands of fans, in the bleachers all saying, we hate you for what you did. And that's so sad. Like, I'm like, man, I thought we in the US were really bad with our kid pop stars and everything like that, but I mean, China and Korea and all of those other countries have to do the same kind of stuff. They go through the same kind of things, and perhaps worse. So simply put, we're talking on this podcast, we're talking about Asian dramas and the way that we've described them. And we're going to talk about, did we fall for it? So did we like it? Did we fall in love with it? Did we fall for it? And we want other people to fall for it as well, because this is.
And check it out if you enjoyed something that we said about the Asian drama in this podcast, and we'll let you know, like, if it's available on Netflix or, you know, where you can possibly check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in general, Asian dramas have hooked into my soul. It has become my third love after my family and Star Wars. And,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I would say that, like, it's tied with D&D right now. So that's how big it is in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm doing a podcast on it. And that means I want to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can find us on What the Force Show, which is a Star Wars podcast as well.
At WT Force Show on Twitter, or whattheforce.ca as our website. Yep.
And just, I guess I'll get some promotional stuff out there for this show eventually.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Are you going to get a Twitter?
I guess I'm going to get a Twitter. So that's exciting. All right. Well, thanks for listening to Fall For It, an Asian pod.